Hello and welcome to the new face of Be Heard TV. For anyone who's ever watched the show before, forget anything that you thought that you knew about Be Heard, because this year it's going to be something entirely different. All the time we hear adults talking about youth and telling us that we're the future, but it's not very often that we actually get the opportunity to express our opinions and share our ideas. But this year, it's your chance to be heard. Throughout the season, we'll be broadcasting live shows on the internet to the entire globe, addressing issues that face our generation today. Tonight's topic is Xbox to cell blocks, and we'll be discussing whether or not video game violence leads to actual violence, gun control reform, and gun violence solutions for the future. Tonight's show is broadcast from the Youth Entity Center in Carbondale, Colorado, in front of a live audience. So the live audience will be coming forward and posing their questions and comments to the panelists. We also hope that you will chip in by going to our Be Heard Facebook page. You can watch the show at www.beheardtv.com and simultaneously comment on Facebook on our Be Heard TV page. And also joining me tonight are our 4 student panelists who want their voices to be heard. Would you guys mind introducing yourselves?
I'm Garrett Sr., and I am from Newcastle, and I'm a junior.
My name is Felix Jimenez, and I'm a senior at Glenwood Springs.
I'm Carly Rosenthal, and I'm a freshman from Carbondale.
I'm Vanessa Bracamontes, and I'm a junior from Rifle.
Thank you, guys, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We're going to go ahead and dive into the first topic of discussion for the night. We're going to be talking about whether video game violence does, in fact, lead to violence in reality, because there's no doubt that video games have become rather violent. They're gory. Some of them take place in actual settings. On almost any controller you use, when you're pulling the trigger for your virtual gun, you're pulling an actual trigger on the hand control. And for some of the arcade games, you're actually holding a gun and pointing it at the screen. So I'd like to just get your guys' initial reactions. Do you think that there's a link between a rise in violence in video games and a rise in violence in the actual world?
There is a rise in violence connected to video games nowadays, for the simple fact that there are studies done that show that a child who has been playing video games since they've been little, they are more capable of pulling a trigger compared to children that were back in earlier generations.
I think a lot of kids don't realize maybe the effects that guns actually have on the world, because they're growing up watching and playing video games and watching violent movies, that if you maybe die, you can just respawn in another location. Things that are killed, you don't have any kind of connection to them. But in real life, obviously that just doesn't happen. So I don't think they feel exactly the connection in real life as in video games.
I think some of these children are being desensitized, but not to the extent as maybe a kid living in the inner city who sees death on a daily basis, who knows somebody who kills people just for getting money. So I think, yes, it may be an impact, but it's not the greatest one, and definitely isn't the catalyst behind the gun violence we see today. It could be many other factors. It could be the fact that we glorify war on the news continuously and continually. We show people dying and being killed. So if the news is the greatest source to children of the truth, and they continually see people being killed in gun violence, maybe that's where they're gaining that from.
Well, and actually, we got from both of you guys that you think that to a certain degree it does make it easier for someone to pull the trigger. The interesting thing, though, is that it seems to only be a problem in the United States, because there are a lot of countries, Japan and the Netherlands are 2 examples, who have a much higher rate of purchasing video games and a significantly lower level of gun violence. So can we really link it down to that, or is there something that compounds it in our own culture, as Felix was talking about, maybe that is glorified in the news, that is making the difference on top of the desensitization?
Well, for the Americans here, having a gun ever since we've had that law that allows us to bear arms, it's become an American identity. And like you said, it is pretty much 60% of homicides here in the U.S. are from guns, related to those. And kids, truly, there was a research done that I saw that had a child who, once he was older, he did create a murder. But he said that he remembered most of his things that he recreated from playing Grand Theft Auto, which was where he stole a car and he went and he killed somebody.
Well, it's not the American identity to kill your neighbor with a gun. The American identity associated with weaponry is protection. Protection for yourself, for your neighbor, and for your freedom. That's really what the American identity surrounding a gun is. So I think to attribute it to that we're just gun-loving Americans who are willing to kill everything, I think it's a little absurd for me.
I think another thing is that, yes, maybe video games do help kids pull the trigger later in life, but another thing is just growing up around guns, maybe if their parents have guns, or if their friends' parents have guns, and they grow up around them, and their parents may use them for hunting, but just being around them for your whole life may impact them.
So there seems to be a lot of discussion about reality versus what happens in the video game world, and you brought up the point that this young individual had actually linked his experience to the game Grand Theft Auto, which is one of the games that actually does take place in real settings. So, for example, Garrett, you're from Newcastle, right?
Yes.
Do you think it makes a difference if it's a video game where you're shooting people and it's set in Newcastle, Colorado, that's based on the actual town that you live in? Does that make a difference to be seeing a real place that you experience?
Well, going off of what Carly said before, when you grow up around guns, there's a different mentality around guns, and sometimes people wonder if maybe people did grow up around guns, they would be more afraid of pulling the trigger. And in retrospect, probably video games do make people pull the trigger.
Well, I think what he's saying is correct in that I've grown up around guns my entire life. And that didn't shift my mentality to being that guns are toys, something to be played with. It shifted my mentality and understanding to be that guns are a dangerous thing that continuously need to be respected and that can never just be fooled around with. I would not have had that knowledge had I not grown up around guns and had the continuous exposure to holding guns and using guns. My dad always told me, don't point that at anybody. Keep it pointed at the ground. Keep your finger off the trigger, safety on, when we were hunting, And just the fact that I was around them gave me an understanding of how powerful of a tool it is. So I think that understanding allows me to realize I shouldn't mess around with guns. So I think to say that it'll cause young people to use it as a toy to kill somebody, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, see, I was basically raised with absolutely no guns in my life. I've never had a gun in my household, and I think I've only touched a gun once ever. And I have the mentality of thinking that guns really do kill. That's what they're designed to do. And whether people use them in a bad way or a good way, I still have the mentality of I don't think that they are really necessary for a lot of people in this country.
Well, I don't think we need to fear anything. I don't have a fear of weaponry as you do. I have an understanding of what it is. And I think to fear it is foolish. That is what causes us to try to ban weaponry instead of trying to create laws that are really aimed at helping society. Currently, we're trying to take guns away from people because we fear them. We shouldn't fear the guns. We should fear the individual, and we should address the problem that is causing this individual to do this. They're going to find another means to kill people if it not be guns.
All right, I'm going to interrupt that for a second because it looks like we have some audience input. I'd like to hear from you.
I was just kind of curious when Felix said that growing up around guns helped him to understand that guns aren't a toy and not something to just be played with. Do you think has anything to do with growing up around guns in general, or do you think that was your parents? Do you think that just growing up around guns can help you to understand that guns are dangerous, or do you think the parents need to take that role as describing to their kids and helping them to understand that they're not to be messed around with?
The parents do need to take the role, but again, that is the role of the parents, not the government. The government isn't there to say that guns are totally bad. The parents need to address with their children the fact that you don't mess around with a gun. That is something you respect. So, yes, it was my parents, but it was also my parents fulfilling their duty. It wasn't being pushed onto them. They accepted that, and I think that everybody who is a parent, they can do that if they really genuinely tried. So if we could educate parents to help them teach their kids to do the right and wrong, I think that would better society more than taking guns away from the individual.
So growing up around guns could potentially be harmful towards somebody's understanding of whether they're dangerous or safe. The responsibility does fall upon the parents, right? That's what you're saying?
Well, it does fall on the parents. But at the same time, saying that it's whether they grow up in a safe environment or a poor environment decides what they do with their actions, again, takes the gun out of the equation as the cause of the problem. It's the parents that are causing these individuals to be like they are. It's the parents in the atmosphere that these children grew up in that is making them killers, not the gun.
Well, you can't really completely blame the parents. It also comes down, you say that you grow up by growing up with guns around you, that could cause whether you think it's right to use guns against somebody or not. But then again, it also comes up to the morals of the person. You can grow up without a gun in your household or around your family, but you can still grow up in a place where it's not safe, and you can see crimes happening day to day, and you know that there's a gun that was involved in that crime.
But again, the action, not the gun, is influencing your morals. Seeing somebody die, whether they're stabbed to death or whether they're shot, makes you think of murder, not of the method in which it was carried out. I mean, you really start thinking about what that action was and whether it is valid to kill another human being for your own selfish purposes, not how should I kill this person.
Exactly, so that goes straight to your morals. It goes to the way you were raised and the way you think you're by yourself, not putting all the weight on top of your parents or the person's parents that did that crime. It all goes to how you decide to lead your own life.
But a majority of the weight is taken off guns, and it's put on the people who are influencing this individual, society, and the people around them. And yes, it could be video games, but to what extent? And should we blame it all on video games, or should we blame it on parents? Because parents are a far more influential figure in their children's lives than a video game could ever be.
So Felix, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another one of the central questions that I really want to tackle tonight. Is there's been a serious rise in it, and it can't all be due to one thing. We've had recently the Sandy Hook shooting, the Aurora shooting, and just this last Wednesday, a mother shot her 3 children. There's an extreme rise in the gun violence in America. In fact, if you look at it compared to other countries, it's drastic, the amount, the significant amount more that we have in this country than other countries. So the question that I want to centrally get down to is why now? What are the causes that are causing this to arise now in this moment?
Well, as I stated before, one of the greatest catalysts in my mind is the glorification of these kinds of actions. Think about if somebody's mentally unstable and their life is over to them, and they just want people to recognize them, to know them. They know that the one route that they can take is kill people. And it's not whether they have a gun, because this person who is mentally unstable will find another way to kill people. So I think that it isn't the guns that's causing people to kill people. It is these people's desire to be recognized, to be seen by everybody on the planet. And they know that the news is going to put their face on the front page of the paper that next day.
All right, I'm going to pause for a second again because it looks like we have some more input from the audience, and I'd like to hear from you.
Well, still with the parents and the video games do have a rating system that it comes down to the parent to enforce that on their child if there ever is a clear connection made between the video games and the violence. It just comes back down to the parent to tell the kid whether they can or can't play that.
Well, that's true. And if you look at it this way, for males, typically in video games, they spend about 13 hours playing video games. And females are usually probably half of that, or 5 hours, 7 hours maybe. But it all does come down to the way the parents monitor the video games. Because you could have a child playing probably like around 8 years old, and those games are rated R and cannot be bought without a parent's supervision. But the parent isn't there sitting with their kid and saying, hey, well, you have an hour to play, and that's it for the day.
Well, the question of violence in media isn't a new one. When TV first started coming out, people were questioning if TV was influencing people in a bad way. And since TV's had time to mature and movies have had time to mature, we've started to move away from television and movies as indicators for violence and start to move into the newer types of media like video games. Because video games haven't been around that long. We're the 3rd generation, I believe, with video games. And at this point, we're starting to worry about whether or not this new kind of media really affects us in a way that is more harmful than previous types of media like movies and TV.
And that could also bring up with society too. The media is helping around with that, and the fact that, like you could bring up what they said, that the world was ending in 2012, and we've known that for many, many years. And it wasn't until this society, until the media kept bringing it up over and over again on the news, and making up movies also, trying to see how the world was going to end and showing how people killed people trying to survive on it?
A lot of people will thrive off of what the media brings them. They will say, well, I guess, if you go around shooting a gun, killing people who may or may not be bad, it depends on their perception of the people, then you're considered cool, or they kind of perceive it as a good thing. They glorify all of this killing. I think that's influenced a lot of young people.
Well, it has influenced a few young people, but the reason video games we see as like the main cause and the change in American values for the youth is it's something they pay attention to. I mean, how many five-year-olds do you know that watch Fox News for 10 hours a day? I mean, it's not as common as a little kid playing video games. So it is up to the parents to restrict this access to these video games, because young people are more impressionable. And as far as adults go, yes, they're submersing themselves in this stimulus, but at the same time, it's not going to influence them that much. I mean, granted, they may think, oh, that's an interesting thought, but it's not going to change the core value of who they are. They're going to stay the same person, and if they are changing so rapidly, there's a mental illness involved.
Carly, I'd like to go a little deeper into something that you just said. You were talking about, how you think it's kind of a problem that this violence is so glorified on television and in the media. But Felix earlier was talking about how he felt that being around guns and being aware of the consequences of guns made him more conscious of those consequences, and he feels has made him have a better understanding of what it means to pull that trigger. So what's the difference between Felix's understanding of being around that gun in person and the media popularizing it so much? Shouldn't this popularization of this horror and tragedy and death be more of a deterrent than a glorification?
Well, if he thinks that having a gun, which you could, in your case, it has worked for you. Having a gun has made you more aware of the consequences of what guns can do. But for people who don't grow up around guns, such as myself, I was also not raised with violent movies and things like that. So if you don't have a gun and everything is glorified on TV, you may not be likely to see the consequences. So it's just a mixture of both, and how much you're getting from the TV, how much you're getting from your parents, and also just your mental state. Almost all of the recent shootings have been committed by people who are mentally ill. And I think the first step into helping the society with this issue is to first look at helping the people who are mentally ill and keeping them off the streets, away from guns, and in safe environments.
But that's institutionalizing them, and these are individuals who have rights, aren't they?
It's not necessarily institutionalizing. I'm not talking about putting all of them behind bars or doing anything like that. I'm saying that we should be looking and basically just keeping an eye out for each other and making sure that everyone is okay, like going to your neighbor's house and making sure that they're okay and they're feeling good. Maybe, just every now and then, just seeing how they're feeling.
So the answer isn't gun control, it's helping these people, right? Addressing the issue.
Yes.
The deeper issue, okay.
And just, if we first help each other, then not nobody, I'm not saying it'll take out all of this issue, but a lot of it will reduce any kind of need or drive to go pull the trigger.
And I completely agree with you on that. What should be done is to help out the people with the illness. Not really, it would be better to help out and make it less accessible to have a gun, and probably make it have a background check as well with the person who gets a gun, and not really check on your neighbor, because that's probably what they have to do on their own and what their family has to do. But you should be able to, if you see somebody that is mentally ill, or you feel that they have some interior problems that they should get help with, then that probably would be wise for somebody to point that person out and help that person get some mental stability.
Well, it almost sounds like you're trying to move towards a paternal state. Instead of us helping each other, you're having the government help us. Don't help your neighbor, have the government help them. That's a detriment to, first of all, the economy, Second of all, to our morals, and third, to the freedom of those individuals. Don't you think?
Well, that would be, you wouldn't be actually going and giving them straight to the government and saying, hey, put this person in a mental institution. You'd go and say, well, this person needs help, and you'd go and talk to that person and see if they actually want your help or want to get some help, instead of actually putting them there, because you can't force a person to go and get help if they don't want it.
But you had said that we shouldn't kind of work with each other. That's like, leave that up to the person to do.
Exactly.
But you're saying we should put these people on a watch list almost, and that's blacklisting them. If the government is continuously looking at them, maybe they'll put them on a no-fly list next. Don't you think that could escalate?
Well, if you go up to your neighbor day to day and say, how are you doing, or if you're doing well, then you'd be going into their own privacy and invading their privacy. But if you see that that person is mentally unstable, then you should actually, that's your cue to go and talk to that person and help them and talk to them about the help that they can get.
So I'm hearing a lot from you, Vanessa, and you, Felix, about the argument about the rights. This person has the right to freedom, and we have these things that the government can't infringe upon. And one of the bigger arguments that there is right now for the limiting of the gun control is because of one of those rights that we are allowed, which is the Second Amendment. But that's one of the things that I'd like to go a little more into depth about, because when the Second Amendment was written in 1791. The right to bear arms, the arms that are referred to, they were talking about muskets. And if you look at a musket, honestly, it doesn't look like the most threatening weapon. You had to put one bullet, stuff down the gunpowder, and you could get off one shot. These days, we've got armor-piercing bullets, and we have magazines with over 10 rounds, and we've got automatic weapons and semi-automatic weapons. Our technology has advanced to such a serious and deadly point. Do you think that right still applies, even though it was written in a different context?
You really shouldn't. I mean, those type of guns, you really wouldn't use that type of gun to go out and hunt an animal. I mean, you would use a gun that takes for long range, but have an automatic gun that shoots many bullets at a time. I don't think that'd really help you out.
But it's not about hunting. I mean, what the reason for the right to bear arms is to overthrow a tyrannical government. And the Second Amendment is applicable to this society as long as there are still governments on our planet that are suppressing their people. Syria, as long as those incidents still occur, where people are being slaughtered by their governments, there is still a need for weaponry. For one of the reasons that we have weaponry, more than just to hunt, more than to protect ourselves, is to protect our freedom, to make sure that our government respects us as citizens as a powerful force to be reckoned with. That's how I see it.
So I'm going to take it over to this side for a second, because I think Felix brought up an interesting point, is that honestly in these dictatorships that we really fear, all the time we hear about one of the first things that they come for is the guns. And you see these dictators, and they're taking away what we have in America as the Second Amendment right, and they're taking away the guns. So do we think that that's something that actually is linked to it, or just kind of these people are exceptions, and that's what they went after?
Well, I think that if we have guns in our household to protect ourselves and protect our freedom, that's a valid cause. It's a good thing to be able to have faith that you can overthrow a government that is not respecting the people. But the guns that are just around in every household are, as we can see, not just being used for that. They are being brought out onto the street by people who feel the need, for whatever reason, to murder a lot of innocent people. And I think there need to be regulations. We need to still have the right and freedom to protect ourselves and our freedom and our people, but at the same time, 30-round magazines are too excessive, and it's just too easy to go out and kill 30 people at once.
Well, when the Second Amendment was written, they wrote in the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights because the states didn't trust federal government. They faced, when we had the revolution in America, we faced a giant army with no guns because they wouldn't let us have guns. And the ones that we did have were illegal. So, and up until this point, we have had no need to rebel against our government. But it is also important to have the opportunity to protect yourself in case your government or another government invades.
So I'm going to interrupt this for just a second, because it looks like we have some more input from the audience, and I'd like to hear from you.
On that same note that you said that the 30-round magazine was excessive, when you see like the AKs or the AR-15s, they're mostly used to go out on the range, go shooting with your buddies, and to have a good time. That's like saying I could take your hammer or your tools away and keep you from going and building with your friends. The 30 and 50 magazine I can see as you seeing is excessive, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but kind of on the whole, just total ban of them would, in my opinion, just not be right, because that would be like saying I could take your hammers or your tools away for the same general reason.
But can hammers and tools go out and shoot 30 people at once? There is a big difference between hammers and tools and a 30-round magazine gun.
But again, hunting and sport shooting is not the only thing that necessitates these weapons, right? If you're fighting the United States government, if they ever came to be, you wouldn't be using 9mm handguns. You would need 30 rounds. We're talking about a country that has F-22s, that is the most advanced country as far as weaponry goes on the planet. And yes, things are going to be misused, just as a nuclear weapon could perhaps be intended to keep peace, but instead is used to level cities. Everything has a dual purpose, and we need to continue to use it for the right reason, but to take it away for the wrong reason that it's being used would be a detriment to the continuance of the society where we don't have to rebel against our government because it does fear us.
Well, then how do you intend to keep the schools safe and keep so much crime off the street if we don't put any more regulations on the thing that's causing this?
To genuinely keep schools safe, I want a government that isn't tyrannical. So that is the issue I think we need to address first, and that is what we are addressing. Granted, there are people who are willing to go into a school and shoot it up, but that calls for extra security. There's always going to be issues like that. Yes, somebody could walk into a school and beat somebody to death with a hammer. Does that mean that we don't allow any object over 5 inches long in a school? No, it means that we need to address the issue of security. And the security here is the lack thereof, the lack of a representative who has a weapon, who's willing and able to put them down if they're trying to kill other people.
Well, if you see, you're talking about how school doesn't have a regulation of saying of a certain, how big a certain item they can bring to a school. There is those type of regulations. Like you can't bring a knife to school, of course, and you can't bring a hammer to school as well. So, no, you can't. Well, yeah, the wood shop does, and they also have knives in the cooking classes. But it's not like a student's going to be carrying around a knife in their backpack or a hammer, because that could bring up problems and that could bring up suspicions of something that might happen.
Well, so what are you alluding to, Woody?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that guns should not be banned. You're right. It should be to help us protect ourselves from the government if something like that would happen to happen, going back to history. But it's just that even if you should put restrictions on guns, because whether or not you have the 30 bullet magazines, there's still people that are going to have those guns, and people should have their own handheld guns. But with schools, you do need regulations, you do need security. But what I'm trying to say is that they do have certain rules against what type of items students can bring in school to help further safety.
I'm not saying that we should allow weaponry in school. In fact, I'm saying that we need to have security to prevent people from harming each other. You can get a knife into school. It's not impossible. But if we have the proper security, you can stop individuals from taking knives into school.
Okay, I'm glad that you guys brought this up, talking about the safety in school, especially in relation to gun control and the rise in gun violence, because that rolls into the next segment that I want to talk about, which is going to be a segment that appears periodically on the show, not all the time, but every several episodes or so, and that is a segment called Eye to Eye. Now, the Be Heard Eye to Eye segment, it's designed to kind of spread the reach of the opinions that we're representing on the show. So what we'll do is we'll try to bring someone in from another part of the country or another part of the world. Sometimes we'll have a live Skype guest on the show and we'll be interviewing them. And sometimes we research a YouTube video from someone somewhere else in the country or somewhere else in the world, and we get their opinions. This week's video is credit of Fox 10, and it's talking about the action hero Steven Seagal and his solution for gun violence.
But after 3 recent incidents where Maricopa County deputies investigated school violence, Sheriff Joe Arpaio is reacting by training his posse members to protect students and he even got some help from Hollywood.
But the greatest treasure we have is our children.
You know him from films like Above the Law. But actor Steven Seagal is also a trained weapons expert and law enforcement veteran of 20 years. Today, he helped Sheriff Joe Arpaio and the Maricopa County SWAT team train volunteer posse members to take down an active gunman in a simulated shooting at a former Fountain Hills elementary school. After an outdoor exercise, posse members moved inside to experience what it's like to keep students safe as they approach two gunmen using semi-automatic rifles inside the cafeteria. It's tough to watch as students yell for help and try to take cover. Joe, gotta go! Arpaio protesters and supporters showed up at the school. Those in opposition say this type of exercise is graphic and unnecessary. But Arpaio believes it's the best way to keep students safe, while politicians continue to debate the growing problem of violence at schools.
I want everybody to know that we're going to be around those schools. And if you do something, we will be armed, and we're going into the schools.
It's important to help protect our children and our schools, and we need to do that with whatever means we have. We have the posse that's already in place. Many of us are already trained to carry weapons, so this is just more training, additional to what we've already received. So it's good for the posse to get out and do what we can to help the community.
For those protesters, we are here to protect the children. That's the main mission. They can say whatever they want, but I'm not going to stop.
Posse members might be shooting at something, who knows what, and who gets caught in the middle? Our little kids. This is nowhere, no gun should ever be in a school.
So this solution is extremely controversial, and speaking personally, it's really hard to decide, where you stand on that. It really would be traumatic for as a student to have someone to have that sort of simulation where someone comes into the school with a gun, and the other side of it is it's kind of dangerous to have a posse coming in to take out someone who's armed with an automatic weapon. So on the other hand, it is a level of protection for our schools. So is this the kind of radical solution we want, or are we looking for something a little more reasonable that we're used to?
I don't think they should have start traumatizing little kids, little elementary kids, by having a bunch of people come in with guns. But I do think that there should be certain trainings for teachers and other people that are working there at the school. But what I've noticed, since we're here in Colorado, honestly, I have not seen a school that has security around at the school. I see teachers walking around, and I see them having duties where they go and they have to watch the students. But I have not seen security that is trained to protect the students and to help out the students around the school. And if they had that, then those securities should be trained. Like, for example, in California, almost every school I went to had about 4 or 5 securities that would go around the school, and they would go outside, and it was pretty much just to keep the students in line. But if a school does have securities, then it'd be great to have them go through this type of training where they would go and go through this type of simulation where they'd learn how to take down somebody who comes in with a gun.
Well, it's interesting to go into that because it seems as though some citizens have become disillusioned that if you don't want a gun in a school, you can't always control that. Even if they do ban guns completely, there's still going to be people that are going to hide their guns, and they might just go postal, and it'll be horrible. But unfortunately, sometimes a well-informed populace has to be traumatized a little. When you look at the 1950s during the Cold War, they had the videos where they'd show kindergartners and first graders about how to duck and cover in case there was a nuclear bomb. And no one really questioned that because a nuclear bomb could melt your face, and it's horrible. And the same thing can happen with a gun, but we've become disillusioned that guns don't always... What am I trying to say here? Guns are an interesting problem, but we can't solve them by trying not to traumatize people.
I think it's difficult to equate the Cold War to weaponry now. The Cold War was a much bigger thing, and it was a much greater issue than gun control is now. We're talking about being nearly at war with another superpower that is completely different than individuals in the society killing each other. But I don't think this is an effective way to do this. You can't traumatize kids, not because it's going to destroy them forever, but because it's disrupting their learning environment. This needs to be a place where they can go, they can learn, and feel comfortable. This training should occur before an officer is put in the force. They should undergo extensive training, extra training, especially in school shootings. And then you should have school resource officers who have undergone even more training to be in schools at all times in order for them to deal with the issue if it were to occur.
I completely agree with both of you guys, what you guys are trying to say. And I just lost my train. What you guys are saying for having them, but what you were saying, how they have the simulations for the nuclear bombs, we also have that for the earthquake and other stuff like that, for natural disasters. And what they were trying to do with having somebody come in with a gun shouldn't really be that traumatizing for students, but they've already been exposed with that, what comes up in the news and what the shootings that have been happening recently. So what the students should go under is knowing where they should go and hide, where they should go and where they know they're going to be safe if something like that would happen.
And that already occurs. We have lockdowns at school on a regular basis. And I think that we are traumatized enough as a population because we have to look at shootings like the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. We don't need to continuously increase the amount we're being traumatized because that's just manipulating the people by fear. We need to give them information in order for them to make the correct decision.
In a lot of schools, it isn't really necessary to have the teachers fully have a gun maybe hidden in their office. In some schools, it might be necessary. In places where these things might happen or are way more likely to happen than in others. But in a lot of places, I think that having guns in the school and have the kids be around them all day and having them know that they're there will form more as to scare the kids than to make them think they're safe. If you had a gun in the school, would you feel more safe or more scared? Because it's so much easier for kids who a lot of teens have a lot of issues going on. They maybe aren't feeling accepted or they just sometimes blow things out of proportion. And for them to be around it and maybe have more easy access than if there wasn't a gun at the school is just could cause so many issues.
I'm going to take a break from that real quick because I think we have some audience input over the microphone, and I'd like to hear some of that.
A question for you. I wonder if any of you know any statistics about how common or how rare it is for a gun that's purchased in order to protect one's family ends up actually hurting or killing someone in the family. I don't know if that's common or rare. I wondered if in your research any of you had learned about that.
And that's a good point that I'd like to broaden just a little bit. You know that people. One of the claims is that these guns are for self-defense, but a lot of the time there are a lot of accidents. So particularly with a situation like this where you're sending posses who aren't necessarily professionals into the schools, whether they've been trained or not, isn't there a lot of risk for accidents?
There is a lot of risk. I think that's why this isn't an effective method for doing this. To address your question, I do not have any statistics on that. I'm sorry. But I would like to go back to what you're saying. It is dangerous. If a blank can, maybe you accidentally load a gun with real bullets and it kills somebody. I mean, isn't that how Bruce Lee died? But it is a risk, and we shouldn't be putting our children into this line of fire. I think that we could do this in a much more effective way at a school designed to help train these officers, not at an elementary school designed to help little kids learn their shapes.
Well, like what the audience member said, I honestly don't know the statistics as well, but I have seen and read about how families that purchase a gun to protect their family, they don't have a way to conceal that weapon from their kids, and they make it in a way that they probably most of them don't have it in a case with the key they have it hung up on a wall where a kid can easily go up and grab the gun and hurt a family if there's something going on in between them.
I do know that, for your question, that police officers, under really, maybe if there's a shooter who's also shooting at them, they only actually hit their mark 18% of the time. And that's highly trained officers. So for maybe someone who knows how to shoot a gun but doesn't necessarily have all the training, because your brain, it doesn't do as well under those circumstances. A lot of times you will think of just your own survival and not maybe protecting your family or other people around you. Your brain will automatically go into like yeah.
But if you have a gun, then you're more able to think of the people around you. If the issue is they have a gun, I don't, I should run. But if you have a gun, you're going to protect yourself by killing this person. And
Yes.
that'll also lead to you protecting the people around you, will it not?
But it's really likely that you'll miss. And if your family's around and you're trying to protect your family from a gunman, isn't it possible, very possible, and almost likely that you might hit your family member instead?
Being shot at is a deterrent. The gunman is being shot at. He's not just going to continue fearlessly. He's going to think, I could get hit by this. I should leave. I mean, that could be a thought that comes across your mind in but a second.
But isn't that what you would think too? If you're getting shot at, wouldn't you think I should leave if that's what the gunman is thinking?
But if you also see, there was also a shooting in I think it was a shopping mall, where a man came in and I think he shot about, I'm not really sure, I think it was about 20 bullets before somebody could come and take him down. Somebody was able to tackle him down to the ground. And he came in and I don't think it came on to like actual the media and was shown, but that was his way of showing, well, I can go in and I can have a weapon and I can shoot this many I can kill this many people before somebody can do something about it.
Now, I'd actually like to move on from this point because it's a really hard one to decide on, and we could go back and forth for a long time about whether or not it's actually effective for someone to be taking down someone who comes in armed and is mentally prepared for a mass shooting. Because we've been talking a lot about some of the problems with the situation as it is today. But since we're going to be the ones who are upcoming and we're going to be filling these roles of the people who are making the decisions about what we do next, I'd like to take a more constructive angle on it now and talk about what do we do? What can we ourselves, what are our ideas, and how do we enact those ideas so that we are actually making the change that will bring down the gun violence in today's society?
Education is always key with problems like this, because in the past we've had problems with drunk driving, and then more recently we've had problems with texting and driving. And national campaigns that have helped educate people about the dangers of these have helped us move past these problems and then move on to more pertinent ones.
So as a nation, we should come together and help each other pretty much get through this and educate the society on what we should do. That's what you're trying to say?
Yes, because banning a weapon or banning an automobile, because people die in automobile crashes all the time, and those are accidents, and there's accidents that happen with guns too. But unfortunately, we can't stop automobile accidents and gun accidents, but we can educate people against them.
Well, as I mentioned before, just helping people out around you, and especially helping the mentally ill people who are a lot of what have caused these shootings, especially the school shootings, Virginia Tech, for instance. He was seeing a therapist throughout almost all of his education, and he was still able to get a gun legally and buy it. So another thing is background checks, to enforce more intensive background checks and rethink what exactly should qualify for you to or to not be able to get a gun.
And even if it's going into the privacy of a person, the background check would be one of the greatest ideas that they would have towards trying to fix this problem that we're having right now with the guns. Because if you have somebody that, like you said, that person was going to a therapist for most of his education, and he was still able to get a gun, I mean, you know that person is mentally ill, mentally unstable, and they're still able to give them a gun. That is leading towards a problem that could kill more people.
I think that background checks obviously are already in use, so that is not something new that we're adding to the system. So I think that discussing that isn't constructive, as Isaac's trying to really have us do. So I think one thing we could do is have a panel of 3 psychiatrists, and if somebody is seeing a patient who they know is just deadly, they know they're going to go on a shooting rampage, they could perhaps send this case to this panel of 3 doctors who could review this patient and then maybe meet with him, and then if they truly believe that he is going to be like a risk factor, then they could decide that he's not eligible to receive a weapon. And again, of course, he can appeal his case if it's not a fair judgment he believes. But I think that is an effective way for us to decide and realize who is too mentally unstable to receive these guns. I don't believe that restricting guns to everybody or any certain type of weapon is effective. I think it is addressing the individuals who shouldn't have guns.
And I'm going to take just another quick break to get another input from the audience.
I keep hearing you guys talk about mentally ill people, but how do you know when they're mentally ill after they commit the crime?
That's a good point, because you've been talking about having psychiatrists on the panel, but it's really hard to spot these things. All the time you hear about these things, like with the Aurora shooting. Everyone who knew him said you would never have guessed that this was the kind of person who would be capable of doing this. So how do you spot them in the first place to know that you should even be sending them to a panel of psychiatrists?
Well, you can tell because even if they say that they're the type of person that would have never done something like that, you can tell because it's in human nature to leave little clues here and there and show. I mean, he bought a gun, and he's a person that probably wouldn't like to have had a gun in this position. And then on top of that, there was also, they said he had planted a bomb in his apartment. So you can see in a person, you can see when things are changing in them. Even if they say that they're perfectly fine, you can tell in their actions and the things they do little by little, you can see subtle little clues that something is not right with them.
Well, if I may, first of all, the 2 things that you had pointed out you couldn't have known. First of all, the gun shouldn't say that you're going to be a shooter. That shouldn't be something that determines you as a crazy person. And second, you wouldn't know he had a bomb in his apartment. Yes, there are going to be people who slip through the cracks. There's going to be people who continue to defy the system and are that one exception that make it seem like everything we're doing is in vain. But if you think about the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, this mother was taking care of her son, and he had become so bad, if you will, as far as his mental illness goes, that she was no longer able to host these little Saturday parties that she had for her friends, and instead took full time to take care of him. So I believe the answer is, as a people, for the government to come and provide funding for those families who really have somebody in their household they cannot manage, or at least just professional help. Somebody maybe who comes in once a week and helps this kid out, more than just psychology, more than just a psychiatrist, somebody who's guiding them, helping the parent establish things for this child to do so they're constructive instead of going into this hole where they start thinking about killing people.
Well, the problem with mental illness is the brain is highly complex, and we still don't quite understand everything that goes on there. We're starting to scratch the surface of what could go on in people that do have mental illnesses, but a lot of times mental illness isn't apparent until it's way too late to help the person. And to require a background check is a good idea, and to have mental illness, but sometimes people aren't going to show the signs of someone who is mentally ill, and sometimes they will get through the cracks, just like Felix said.
But it could reduce all of the shootings if we try and have, if like the mother had maybe gone and realized that maybe she, even though she knows her son probably better than anyone else, would have gone to someone who spends their entire life just trying to help people who are mentally ill, he might have changed his mind and maybe not committed the crime. Because even if you know someone, you don't necessarily know exactly how the illness or that person's brain works. And to think that you can, in yourself, take on the responsibility of keeping them away from any violence just isn't very reasonable, and especially to have a gun in the house while you know that your son maybe isn't mentally stable.
Well, it's also important to realize that sometimes people will have a traumatic experience in their past that they don't know is still ingrained in their memory. One of my favorite quotes about the psychology is, a bad memory is like a chainsaw that just suddenly appears in your living room. You don't have anywhere to put it. Sometimes you keep it on the stairs or the shelf, and sometimes it roars to life and it destroys your living room. Bad memories are one of the reasons that humans are the way they are when it comes to violence, but we also learn from them. And psychiatrists can help with that, but sometimes a bad memory will roar to life and someone doesn't realize that it's coming to life before it's too late, and then it just goes downhill from there.
So maybe a solution here isn't to just, lose hope and think we can't help these people. These people aren't going to be able to help themselves. Instead, we should increase the funding on a federal level for these organizations aimed at helping people with these diseases, mental illnesses, that we can recognize in shooters that have already occurred. Maybe this shooter had Asperger's. Then we should start funds to help addressing people with Asperger's and helping them get medications that will help lessen their symptoms.
So that was great, guys. That's exactly what I was looking for, and it seems like unanimously there's kind of a push for an increased help with mental illness, because that seems to be one of the root causes that we're focusing on, whether that's through more funding or through more education or a combination all of. I'd like to thank you guys, because that's really, I think, one of the highlights of the show is the more constructive, what can we do in the future to solve this problem. So I'd just like to thank you guys for that, and I'd like to thank you for being on the show, all of you. It was very productive, and it's really what Be Heard is about, getting these opinions from the youth out so that we have a forum to share them. So I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and I hope that you tune in next week for our next show, which is Drink Up 18-Year-Olds. We're going to be talking about whether or not the drinking age should be lowered in the United States. We're going to be talking about a bill that would allow 18-year-olds to drink in public with their parents' permission. And we're also going to be talking about some of the health effects that come along with maybe a lowered drinking age. So I thank you all for joining us tonight, and I hope you tune in next week. Have a good night.